She opened our marriage. I found someone better, now she regrets it all. I never imagined I would end up in a situation like this, but here I am. My wife and I had been together for 10 years, married for 8, and we met back in college. We were each other's first real relationship, and for a long time, I believed we had something rare and worth protecting. I guess I was the only one who felt that way. A while ago, she started a new job, and like always, she had a hard time fitting in because she has never been very outgoing. I actually encouraged her to be more social, and eventually, she became friends with some women at her workplace. Some of them were single, others were divorced or casually dating, but none of them were married. At first, I was glad to see her making connections, but then she started going out with them more, staying out for drinks, and acting different. I noticed the change right away and tried to bring it up, but I also did not want to come across as controlling. Slowly, the distance between us started showing in our intimacy. She never really initiated before, but now it seemed like she was either too exhausted or just uninterested. Around that time, their office brought in a new manager, and it was clear that she and her friends were paying him a lot of attention. She would mention him occasionally, but after a while, it felt like she was overly focused on the way he handled situations that did not sound strictly professional. I asked her about it, and she brushed it off. Then she started asking strange questions like whether I regretted not being with more women before marrying her. I told her the truth, that she had always been enough for me. I noticed a strange expression cross her face for a second, but she changed the subject quickly. Then she brought up the idea of opening our marriage, saying maybe it would bring back some excitement. I was stunned. This was not something she would have ever suggested before. I asked her if it had anything to do with the manager, and she insisted it did not, but admitted she felt like she had missed out on something in life. Still, she said she did not want to lose me, and this seemed like a safer alternative. I was torn, but eventually, I gave in, thinking maybe it would pass. Over the next year, she went on dates, had random flings, and unsurprisingly started seeing that manager more seriously. Meanwhile, I tried to participate too, but I could not bring myself to sleep around. I went on a few dates, but it just felt wrong. She would occasionally ask how I was holding up, but it did not change how she acted. After a while, I stopped feeling anything for her. The love I once had just withered away. Then I met someone. A woman who had moved here from South Korea. We hit it off during our first date, then another, and eventually, we became intimate. I never knew what true intimacy felt like until I was with her. She made me feel appreciated in a way I had never felt before. When my wife found out, she seemed amused at first, almost entertained, but as time passed, she began questioning my connection with this new woman. That was the moment I reminded her that this entire setup had been her idea, and she was the one building something with that manager. She did not argue. She just sat there, looking like she wanted to speak but did not. Not long after that, she began making sudden changes. She would come home early with groceries, clean the house top to bottom, bring me food at work, and suddenly she was the one initiating intimacy again. If none of this had happened, I might have been thrilled by the attention, but it felt hollow. I barely responded to her efforts, and when I did, it was only out of obligation. Whatever part of me had belonged to her was gone. I asked her what was behind her sudden shift, and she said she wanted to show me she still loved me. That made me laugh. I could not help it. I reminded her about her nights out, her friends, her flings, and her manager. She had nothing to say and went to bed crying. The following evening, she was waiting for me when I got home. She said she wanted to end the open marriage arrangement and that it had been a terrible mistake. She told me she regretted everything and wished we could go back to focusing on just us. I asked her to be honest about where all of this came from in the first place. Turns out, it was her friends who planted the idea. They talked about all their wild experiences and made her feel like she had missed out. When her manager showed support for that mindset, she got swept up in it. What started as an emotional connection with him turned physical after we agreed to open the marriage. She said the whole thing felt like speeding recklessly while drunk, exciting at the time but terrifying in hindsight. She admitted that she had thrown away something meaningful for temporary thrills and now felt like she had destroyed our marriage beyond repair. I told her I might never be able to see her the same way again. She collapsed crying, and I just held her quietly until she fell asleep on the couch in my arms. Since then, she quit her job and cut ties with those friends and the manager, but I have not ended things with the woman I met. She makes me feel like myself again. To be honest, I do not really know what I am supposed to do next. I honestly wish I could get back the feeling we used to have, the one that made it all feel real and worth it, but the truth is, the woman I am seeing now helped me survive one of the worst periods of my life, so I figured it made sense to speak with a professional. I set up therapy, hoping to sort through everything before making any big decisions. The therapist seemed like she knew what she was doing, calm, understanding, and ready to dig in, even during our first session. My wife took that first appointment as her chance to lay everything out. She admitted that her group of coworkers had filled her head with doubts, made her think she was missing out on life just because she had only ever been with me. Then when the new manager started paying attention to her, those same friends pushed her to entertain it. They told her it was a chance to find herself, to see what else was out there. She told me she felt ashamed, so she did not cross any physical lines at first, but it was one of the divorced women who suggested opening the marriage, saying it was a clean loophole and that some couples even grow stronger from it. That is when she came to me and pushed the idea like it would help us. Once I agreed, which I still regret, she started living it up, thinking it was exciting and new, but she quickly realized it was all surface level. It had none of the foundation we had built over the years. She told me she could see the pain in my face but kept lying to herself that this was all some adventure, some harmless thrill. She said it never really hit her until she saw how much I changed. She said the anxiety started creeping in, and she began having panic attacks. When she brought it back to her friends, they just told her it was part of the experience and that it was normal for a husband to react that way. That was when it clicked for her. These people were toxic and were dragging her and our marriage into a hole. That is why she has been trying everything lately to win me over again. I did not say much during that session, but I told the therapist that I was still involved with the woman I had met. The therapist said plainly that no kind of resolution could happen while I was still connected to someone else and suggested we come back for another session in 2 days. During that next visit, I asked my wife directly if anything physical had happened between her and the manager before we opened the marriage. She stared at the floor and asked me not to make her say it. After pushing her for the truth, she admitted it was not sex, but they had touched themselves in front of each other. She believed it did not count because there was no contact. I could barely process what I was hearing. She began shaking, crying so hard that her nose was running, and even the therapist looked stunned. She dropped to her knees, wrapped her arms around my legs, and begged for forgiveness. I asked her what made her finally see the manager for who he really was. She told me she was walking past his office one evening and overheard him talking with another guy from work. He said she was easy, that quiet ones always are, and that he never had plans to leave his fiancée. He called her a fun distraction and said he almost felt bad for me, but in his words, "You snooze, you lose." Hearing that broke her. She told me she walked to her car and threw up in the parking lot. I asked her if she loved him and if she had ever stopped loving me. She said through tears that she never stopped loving me, which somehow made it worse. She thought she was chasing love, but now she knows she was chasing nothing. She gripped my arm, looked right into my eyes, and said she missed us, the way things used to be before all this. She suggested we leave everything behind, move somewhere new, and rebuild. I told her that would not be fair to the woman I am seeing and that I need time apart to figure out how I actually feel. She broke down again, clinging to me like I was going to vanish. The therapist managed to calm her and explained that taking space might help both of us. Once we got home, I started packing my things. While I was doing that, my wife got a video call from one of her old friends. The woman was crying. She said that after my wife quit, she started hooking up with the manager too, and now she thinks she might be pregnant. Worse yet, she has a boyfriend who she was serious about, and the fling happened only because she wanted to see what it was like. Her boyfriend found out when he came across an email about the pregnancy, and when he confronted the manager, the guy accused her of trying to trap him. I could not even look at the screen. I just grabbed my bag and walked out. Since then, I have been living in a small apartment and, at my brother's suggestion, spoke to a divorce lawyer. I am not saying I made a final decision, but right now, I do not feel like fighting to save this marriage. I think my wife can feel that too. Before I left, she tried to sleep with me one last time, but I turned her down. That was when she snapped and screamed, asking what my lover gives me that she cannot. I just shook my head and said if she really still had to ask that question after everything we had been through, then that tells me everything I need to know about where this is going. And I walked out. She would do anything to undo her mistakes, but that is not how life works. You cannot rewind. You cannot unmake choices. You just live with them. Good luck, Rain.